Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Pickett, and I'm one of the librarians here at Flower Library. Today, I wanted to present to you Genealogy Level 1, an introduction. So here's an overview about today's presentation. I wanted to tell you a little bit about me first, because my approach to genealogy and kind of how I got here might be a little bit different than what you expect. I also wanted to talk to you about your very first steps to take, organization systems, and things you can use as you go through your research journey. I wanted to talk to you about how to find gaps in your information. And then I wanted to take a dive into all of the resources you have that are accessible to you, both at Flower Library and things you can access from anywhere. I also wanted to end by giving you some ways to boost your skills and my most important pieces of advice. And then I wanted to let you know that you have some great contacts that you can have right in your back pocket. Okay, so to get started, a little bit about me. So as you can see, I actually started out at Flower Library as a children's librarian. I became a children's librarian here in 2011, and I interned quite a few times before that. So my background as a genealogy researcher um, was kind of bits and pieces over 9 years, because I was in the kids' room for 9 years before I got transferred to adult services in 2020, 2 weeks before the shutdown happens. So I had weekly reference shifts at the reference desk, and then I had a once a month weekend shift there as well, where I would get the basic genealogy questions that came my way. So I did have that experience, but I really spent a lot of time in our kids' room. So I, am a beginner just like you, and I really want to learn about my family history so that I can pass things on to my kids that you see in the photograph there as well. So I would really like them to know more about where they came from. So your very, very first steps as you are starting your research journey or helping your patrons start their research journey is to determine the goal of the research. You really want to understand what is driving the research that you are kind of about to embark on. Are you looking for an overall knowledge, those kind of um, little bits of history, or are you looking for those solid evidence, the proofs that, yes, you can say, I am an ancestor of somebody who fought in the Civil War? You need to know exactly what you're looking for so you can determine the route that you're going to take. And then you want to start by writing down what you yourself know. I always say to start with yourself and work backward. You want to include everything that you know about your family members. Make sure you include their full names and their maiden names. Also include their middle names as well, not just their middle initials if you know them. You want to think about dates and places of important events. Those are going to help you out as you go through your research journey. And you also want to write down their occupations and any impactful stories that you have, because you'll find that as you start sharing your research with others that kind of cross your path, the most fun things to share are those funny stories or those things you come across that give your research some life. So definitely write down those impactful stories as well. And they're things that you're going to want to pass on to your children or loved ones someday as well. And as you start researching, you're going to find right away that you're going to need some kind of way to keep yourself organized. And I always tell our patrons that find what works for you, what makes logical sense and financial sense for you. Just because you see these awesome, amazing binder systems out there, it doesn't mean that you have to go that way. Some of our patrons find they have great success with folders. Others, have just a paper system, but whatever you use, make sure that it makes sense to you. Okay. And you can also use ancestral charts that you find online. I can get to one. Let's see. There it is. Okay, so you'll notice up in the upper right-hand corner, there are spaces to, and especially along the right-hand side, there are spaces to number the charts. And as you add more people to your research, you're finding that it's going off all over in different directions. So definitely, no matter what system you use, keep yourself organized. And I find for me personally, including these numbers is extremely helpful. So something to keep in mind. And this ancestral chart, by the way, there's no subscription. It's completely free out there, so you can print as many as you want. There are ones on places like ancestry.com. You may find that you need a subscription to access things sometimes. So just keep that in mind as well. But regardless, whatever you use, just use what works for you. Okay. So after you write down what you yourself know, now it's time to ask your family members those specific questions and find copies of any physical documents that you can, like birth and marriage and death certificates. Find copies of family obituaries. A lot of times there's going to be, hopefully, a wealth of information in there for you to look at and kind of go off in different directions. And if you're extremely lucky, there might be a family Bible kicking around somewhere. Actually found this picture online of someone's family Bible, and I was very, very jealous at the amount of information that they have there. You also can ask for wedding announcements. A lot of times you'll find some awesome pictures associated with those as well. And newspaper articles are some of my favorites because a lot of times you'll see that things that are reported in the newspapers kind of changes a little bit over the years. Things that were important at one point to report on aren't important in another. So the stories are always my favorites. And of course, graduation announcements, copies of diplomas, passports, and photographs, of course. Those are all important things that you can keep track of. But always consider the condition of your documents. If you come across things that are very fragile or very old, I would suggest maybe taking a photograph of those on a cell phone or a tablet, just so you've got some kind of record of the information there, that it's stored in another place, because at some point, these paper documents, they're going to fall apart on you. So this is kind of something else that you can handle and keep the physical document packed away safely. So of course, take your breaks as you go. Always keep yourself organized, but most importantly, keep track of where you found that information. We all know a lot of times that information moves on the internet or it disappears completely, and all of a sudden you're missing something. You need to go back and find it and you can't. So keep track of where you found that information. I actually like to print out the page that I found. That way it's got the link on the bottom, it's got the date that I found it, it's all right there for me. But sometimes that gets hard because you've got a lot of paper piling up. So, it's something to consider. And also, of course, for our patrons, you need to consider printing costs and be mindful of that. So, if you'd rather jot that information down on a piece of paper or on an ancestral chart, go for it. Just, keep track of where you found it. Okay, so start looking at your family tree, between the information that you have found and the information that your family members have. All that information, you're going to start seeing gaps in your information. Do you need dates of those important events? Do you need the locations? Do you need to back up those awesome stories with exact dates and information? That's going to be where you start looking for your first steps of your research. Those holes are the exact things you're going to want to fill in first. And of course, organizations like the DAR, they're very specific when it comes to enrollment. They have very specific requirements. So the documents that you would submit are very exact. So you need to make sure that you're following the correct patterns for them, and you're submitting the correct sources, and that can get tricky. So make sure that you're not submitting things that have been modified or that have human errors in them, and room for those, those problems. Things like headstones, obituaries, newspaper articles, those are all secondary sources and there's room for those errors. So, keep in mind what kind of information you need to look for. If you're enrolling or your patron is enrolling in this kind of an organization, they need those hard and fast proofs. So keep that in mind. Okay, so let's take a dive into our resources. The first resource you have to access, of course, is the staff and volunteers here at Flower Library. The volunteer here in the genealogy room where I'm sitting tonight his name is Terry, and his knowledge of the world of genealogy is absolutely and utterly amazing. He's our historian here at Flower Library, and I always call him kind of a walking encyclopedia, if you will, of this area. He's fantastic. Definitely reach out to him with any questions that you have or any stumbling blocks that you've hit. He's amazing and will help you out if he can. Genealogy department is open every day. We're open Monday through Saturday from 12 to 4. That's when he typically tends to be here. But of course, librarians can always grab any resources if you're here and, or if you've got a question that you called us up with, we can pull those resources that we need at any time. But within the building, of course, we have access to Ancestry.com. We have some microfilm that I wanted to talk to you about today. We have a few other things in-house that I also wanted to highlight for you. Number one is Ancestry.com. When I made this presentation, it was only accessible inside an NCLS library, but that has since changed. And I'm so excited for our patrons to hear about this one. Hopefully you know that through December 31st, Ancestry is accessible anywhere using one of our links. And I'm so excited for that. I can't wait for that to kind of take effect for our patrons, for them to hear about it at least. And Ancestry provides access to so much information, and it's constantly growing. But something to keep in mind is that there's information that Ancestry has kind of put into their database that they have gathered from outside sources. And then there's information that everyday researchers have added to Ancestry through what are called family trees. And those are things that are built by, ordinary researchers. And you kind of have to take that information with a grain of salt because you can't always be sure of the quality of the research that's behind the information that's typed in there. But I will say they can be a treasure trove of photographs, especially the picture you see on your screen is actually one of my grandmother and her sister. It's one that we didn't have that I found in one of the family trees that somebody had put online. So I was very, very excited to stumble across that one. So not only can you find some great places to start your research and kind of verify facts, but you can find some amazing photographs. And I know that's her. You can tell immediately by her face if you knew my grandmother. Okay, so we could spend an entire class on Ancestry and searching tips, and just there's so much to explore and to know. But I kind of wanted to give you a few tips and tricks to take with you today. And my best advice for Ancestry and for genealogy research in general is the only way to learn is to try it out and to explore. That's the way that I've learned over the years, and especially now that I've transferred to adult services, is to just really take my time and explore the resources when I've got a few minutes. You learn so much just by trying. And, when you hit those stumbling blocks, I always suggest trying your father's side of the family or male relatives, if you can, because actually for two reasons. Because number one, male names didn't change, so they're a little bit easier to track. And number two, we know that especially as you go backward in time, women weren't always regarded very well in history. So our information wasn't always kept as well either. So it's a little harder to find. So I would say try father's side or male relatives when you hit those stumbling blocks and see if that helps you out. You also need to keep in mind that Ancestry, when they're putting the information into the database, they're transferring handwritten records. So sometimes there's incorrect spelling of names. So when your results list come up, don't ignore those things that look like they're off by a few letters. Chances are, sometimes it's wrong, but sometimes it could be the right person with just a couple letters wrong. So you've got to check those out. But also when you're searching and, you type in a full middle name and you don't get anywhere, try shortening it to a middle initial. If that doesn't get you anywhere, nothing looks right, take that middle initial out completely. Your results will change so much when you change those three things with that name, oddly enough. So definitely give that a shot as well. And then, of course, don't discount those last names that sound the same but aren't spelled the same. For whatever reason, sometimes that happens when the information was put into Ancestry, or when the information was spoken to the original person who was handwriting the records. Something might have been off then as well. So there's a lot of room for human error. So don't discount those things that you see. And of course, if there is a tiny, tiny little chance that the person might have moved, check that record out as well. I can't tell you how many times I've run into that mistake on my end, where the person had actually moved and I didn't expect it. And I kind of, that result isn't right. It can't be, it's across the country, when actually it was. So, there are ways to kind of focus in or narrow your location results and kind of expand them as well. So take the opportunity to do both if you hit a stumbling block, or you're not coming up with what you expected. And then the time consuming part with this research comes in when you find that you have to try these possibilities, all of them that you're seeing, for every single person that you search. So Ancestry can be a rabbit hole of research. You kind of spiral down through, and before you know it, hours have passed by, but it's so much fun to finally have that moment where, you finally found what you're looking for. So yeah, give these tricks a try and see if they help you out. Something else we have at our library are our microfilm readers. We actually have 3 in our building. We have 2 that are accessible at any time the library is open, like the one you see here in the image. And then we have one older machine that's located within our genealogy room that is locked when the room is not open, of course. We have kind of quite a few newspapers that are offered on microfilm, but the one that's accessed the most is our Watertown Daily Times film. I will say we do not have an index to the searching. So if you don't have a specific date or even a specific month or year that you are looking for, it could be reel after reel after reel that you're digging through. So when you hit that situation and you don't have that exact time frame, we suggest reaching out to the Watertown Daily Times, having them use their index and their searching abilities over there, narrow down the date that you're looking for, and then come back over here. We have a microfilm that you can use to find your article and get it printed, and you're on your way. And speaking of printing, the machines that you see on your screen, they can not only print and save, so you can email your articles off and do what you need to do with them, but they can also crop things down. They can change the lighting. They can, zoom in, zoom out. There's so many neat things that you can do with these readers that improve the quality of our microfilm and our newspapers. So there's some fantastic things that we are capable of now. And some other in-house things that we have for you to access include church records. And I will say these are mostly within Jefferson County. And our staff are working diligently to get these digitized and much easier to access and search. We do have a few estate claims. There's not too many of those. We do have some. And the resource actually, though, that I'm most proud of include our family files. And I wish that I could turn the camera so you could see them here in the genealogy room, because they line the walls of the room I'm in. And they contain hundreds of thousands of clippings of local families, and they're constantly growing. Our volunteers are clipping obituaries out of the Watertown Daily Times, the physical copy of the Watertown Daily Times on a very regular basis. But we have found lately that as more obituaries move online rather than being printed just in the newspaper, we're having a little bit of trouble keeping up. And in fact, we've decided recently that we can't clip those obituaries that are only online. We just don't have the staff or the volunteers to do that. So we tell our patients, just because we don't have a copy in the binder doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. We just have some digging to do, but those files are absolutely amazing. We also have access to historic maps. We've got some published genealogies, of course, and histories. We have vertical files of newspaper articles on places and topics that we've collected over the years. We also have access to Watertown City directories, those older years that are kind of in poor repair and were falling apart have been digitized by a grant for us, and they are accessed online, but we do have mostly physical copies here in the library for those as well. Okay, so resources that you can access from your fingertips right at home or within your own library. There it goes. All right, so if you were to go to NCLS's website, click on For Libraries on the right-hand side or the Helpful Resources button. When you click on that, this is the genealogy LibGuide that you could access. And definitely explore, see what you find. There's a lot of information here, but the one part I did want to point out was the resources that are accessible from anywhere. Okay. And as you scroll down through, of course, there are videos focusing on certain topics, but on the left-hand side, you will see a list of so many databases that you can access. And some of them do pertain specifically to Watertown, like our Watertown Daily Times and our high school yearbooks that have been digitized for us down here on the bottom. But when you scroll back up, there are some that are helpful for patrons across the state, like the New York State Historic Newspapers. Okay, so from here, there are newspapers across the state that are searchable in so many different ways. If you wanted to just browse what's available in Jefferson County, for example, you click on the county, scroll down through, and you can see that, you know, it covers a weird variety of years. But there are a bunch here, including some different versions of the Watertown Daily Times. Okay. But like I said, counties across the state, things you can access, and you can also have access to a search bar if you wanted to search for a specific topic or name, and you could limit it by year, by certain paper, although watch for different names of the paper. You might have to select more than one. You can select more than one county, city, all sorts of different things. Okay. Something else to check out is Fulton History, another great place to look for digitized papers. You search My Archives. There it is. All right. So with the way this database is built, it's really helpful to use Boolean searching, use the word and, use quotations. It kind of helps narrow your results a little bit. And I will say too that this database doesn't necessarily have good, solid, long runs of newspapers, but it is a gold mine when you can come across things that you are looking for. Just can be tough to search sometimes. Okay, and then my newest find include the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. This specifically is the New York chapter. They have chapters in every, well, I think in every state, at least that's what it looked like. This is their page for genealogical research. So you go down through. They've got a ton of different resources for you to check out with your patrons. But like I said, all it takes is just some digging and playing, seeing what you find. Okay, of course, we have fold 3 here listed as well. With fold 3, though, we are finding both of myself and with our patrons that they tend to focus on active war years as opposed to those who were enlisted during peacetime. Like my grandfather, for example, I know he was enlisted in the army, but he was definitely enlisted during peacetime. His records don't show up. And I found that with quite a few of our patrons as well. So something to consider. Okay. And yeah, there's a wealth of resources here. I won't go into all of them. We could spend hours and hours going through them, but they are here linked through the LibGuide on NCLS's website for you to explore. Okay, so quick before we end, there are a whole bunch of different ways for you to boost your skills. Of course, you can access some books from our library's collection, but if your time is anything like ours here at our library, it's a very short supply. So we are hoping to have some open lab like events here through the winter. And if they work well, we'll have them all year. I'm hoping to focus on ancestry.com in December and Watertown Daily Times and Family Files in January. I know these are both, resources that are mostly in-house, with the exception of Ancestry. But, if you're able to travel to the library and want to join us for these events, you are more than welcome to. There will be specific date information on our website's calendar of events, and you're definitely welcome to join us. But my best advice is for you to just explore the resources and what there is to offer, and ask the questions and bug those who are the pros, because they have all the knowledge. And I find that more often than not, they're more than willing to share. You just have to ask. Okay. And some important contacts for you to keep in your back pocket. One of the most important people for you, or offices, I should say, for you to be aware of is your county clerk's office, because they are the keepers of all the land records, the tax rolls. They're going to have an archive and somebody who can search that archive for you, and help your patrons access all of that awesome information. But of course, just like with everyone else, they are on kind of a delayed schedule with COVID and kind of all the backlog that they're going through. So something to keep in mind. Also, too, you're going to want to be aware of town and village offices. They're going to be especially important when it comes to birth, death, and marriage certificates, but I find that they all vary slightly especially when it comes to fees, and the requirements that they have for you kind of proving you are who you say you are, or you're related to that person, all that kind of stuff. But they'll definitely help you out on your search should you ask. And you also need to be aware of the New York State Department of Health's website, particularly when it comes to those who are adopted. Here at our library, we've had quite a few people come in who say, they just learned that they were adopted, and they have no idea where to turn. So, we point them to that website, and then we go picking Terry's brain, because he's amazing when it comes to making those connections. You, of course, also want to be aware of your historical and genealogical societies and see what kind of information and knowledge you can share back and forth. And then one of my most recent contacts that I was so excited to meet and chat with, I just met the director of the 10th Mountain Division in Fort Drum Museum, and he is absolutely amazing. He let me know that we are welcome to pass our patrons on to him when it comes to deciphering military records and kind of knowing which direction to go when it comes to navigating those resources, because that's their bread and butter. That's exactly what they do. And he is very well versed when it comes to navigating those records. So definitely reach out to him should you need to. And of course, I'm here to help you out. But like I said, I'm a beginner as well. So if you have a question I can't answer, I definitely have the staff here in the building and the volunteer and the experts here in the building who can help us out. So that said, we are at the end of our presentation. I hope you took away some good tips and tricks and have a lot of fun exploring genealogy research. Talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.